She kinda bad though. Is that Frost?
Oh my goodness!
I just want to start by saying, sorry if the gameplay looks like ass at some points. I streamed this on PS Plus, so I had to rely on my Wi-Fi and PlayStation server, so if it looks fuzzy, that's why. And don't get started in the comments saying, well, it's gonna look like ass anyway because you're playing. I'm not trying to hear that bullshit. My gameplay is always the crispiest you could ever find. I wish it didn't have to be this way, but when I tried to emulate the gameplay like this, all I can say after experiencing this on PS Plus streaming, I can see why Google Stadia flopped. It's trash. Anyways, I've taken up enough time already. Let's talk God of War Ascension.
God damn it!
Now going in this game, all I heard was bad things, bro. Whenever I looked up the game, all I saw was God of War Ascension sucks, the gameplay sucks, the story sucks, it gets no bitches, it gets no money, it cannot stack to the ceiling. And what they're saying about the story is 100% true. It sucks. The first two words that come to mind when describing it is forgettable and unnecessary. The game starts out so strong. You're fighting a living prison. You're like, why is Kratos here? The Furies are cool. This whole thing, it's just an epic battle. You're flying through the air, nuts to butts, going crazy. So while you're making out with this beautiful intro, the game tells you immediately afterwards,
I busted in my pants.
Game simply just can't recapture the beauty of the intro, and the plot is just a major letdown. The game pretty much answers how Kratos left at the service of Ares, but the dude don't even show up. Instead, you got the whack-ass, stank-ass Furies. They're not even in the game that much either. It's ridiculous. So then when you fight them, you don't give a shit at the end. You're just like, oh, I gotta fight these weird women that have appeared for like 3 total minutes of screen time. Then there's this dickhead. The only thing I remember about him is that he was voiced by Troy Baker. So this dude was pretty much bullied by the Furies, so that's why he helps Kratos, because he finally wants to do good for the world. But you don't care, because just like his stank moms, he's in the game for like 5 minutes. And plus, before the ending, Kratos is just not rocking with the dude, but then when the ending comes around, he's all remorseful about him, he likes him. I'm like, dude, I just don't believe it. Kratos is the only character you care about, and that's only because he appeared in the other games. If you played this just by itself as a standalone game, you wouldn't care about Kratos either. He's like 5 lines of dialogue. Overall, I think it answers an important question, but it didn't have to be an 8-hour experience to answer that question. You could answer it in like 2 sentences in God of War 1. But luckily here, the gameplay puts the team on its back.
So no head?
The combat in this game is meaty, dude. Pause. Some of the grabs now turn these visceral fights where you're up close and personal with the enemy dodging attacks, and they end in a grisly execution. Sometimes you hop on an enemy and ride them, pause, and start swinging at the little enemies. I feel like there's much more of an emphasis on grappling. I feel like you can grab more enemies off rip and then throw them into other enemies as a method of crowd control. There are now some cooldown abilities using magical items. 2 of these are really good, mainly the Time Stone and the Clone. And then they hype up the one for the end, the eyes, and they just suck. You get them with like 40 minutes left in the game. There's not even an upgrade for them. And all it is like a quick little flashbang. Meanwhile, the Time Stone, for example, is so fucking... You suspend them in reality in one point in time as they are defenseless against the agony you are setting upon them. And the fucking eyes are just like...
Flashbang through the door!
I think the biggest change is that this time there are no secondary weapons. Instead, the Blades of Chaos can hold 4 different elements. You got fire. You got ice. You got like dead people, zombies and shit. Finally, you got... I like all the different abilities you get with each one. My main problem with it though, they're just not balanced. Like, the zombie powers are just so much better than everything else in the game. It's mainly because they have the best crowd control moves and you get swarmed by enemies in this game. The fucking worst is when you get swarmed and the camera zooms out for a cinematic effect, but you can't see shit. You pull out a goddamn telescope to see where Kratos is among the waves of enemies beating the shit out of you. Also, the revamped rage meter does not help against swarms of enemies. It's now easier to fill up, but every time you get hit, it goes back down. I didn't mind having it in a system like this, but like half the combos in the game are locked behind the rage meter, so if it's not full, you're not going to use them. I just hate when games make you feel limited with your options. And locking away so many combos behind such a fragile meter is bullshit, especially when the game throws millions of enemies at you. The worst offender for this is probably the Trial of Archimedes. If you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. This shit is hell. You gotta fight through 3 full waves of enemies. No checkpoints, no heals. It's excruciating. It's like 15 minutes of just pure nuts to butts swarmed action. And it's really fun, I gotta say, but it is brutal. And that's when I think this game is at its best. And everything's clicking, you're fighting off hordes of enemies, you feel like a fucking badass. And it's good that these battles are great, because the boss fights are pretty disappointing in this one. The first boss in the game is easily the best, has the best cinematics, has the best mechanics, and it's all fun because you're fighting a literal prison. I think my second favorite boss fight, and the only other good boss fight in the game, is against the ghetto Doctor Strange. There's not even lore against this guy, it's just a fun battle because you kind of have to platform while you fight him, and he can like turn back time and shit. Plus, once you beat him, you can Goomba stop his little Siamese twin.
Mamma mia!
Besides that, all the fights with the Furies are kind of boring, and the final boss fight, spectacle-wise, it's incredible, but mechanically, it's just not there. You're either in this boring tentacle section, or you're just fighting the giant squid head for like half the time, and it's just not fun. It also doesn't help, as I stated earlier, that you don't really care about the Furies, so the boss fight doesn't really mean anything. There's some other gameplay aspects I want to touch on real quick. Platforming, they added a grappling hook, thank God. Besides that, it's more the same. There are no balance beam sections, thank God. But sometimes the platform can still be imprecise. And these moments of inconsistency with the platform are usually when the game is at its most frustrating. There isn't enough for it to like really hurt my enjoyment of the game, but still I wish there was less and less because I just don't find them that interesting. Finally, there are puzzles in this game, and they're actually fun sometimes. Sometimes I feel like a fucking idiot though doing them. Main problem with these though, and maybe I'm expecting too much here. I think I am. I just like puzzles where there's multiple options to solve it, but here you have to do what the game wants you to. But I actually like the puzzles here to break up the pace of the combat and the platforming. I think it works well. Hey man, that's all I gotta say about this game. I'ma put it in the low B tier. The adventure is still fantastic, the gameplay still carries the game, but the disappointing story, disappointing boss fights, and some weird new mechanical changes hold it back for me from matching God of War 1. The one thing bugging me about this game though, why the fuck is it called God of War Ascension? The story didn't answer that question. Come on, think back to your experience with the game.
I got it!
It's called God of War Ascension because you're on an elevator for half the game. It all makes perfect sense now, and now you know the secret.
FBI, open up!
Oh shit, Sony found me. They didn't want me to share the secrets. Listen close, I don't have a lot of time left. My final message to the world. I thought Breath of the Wild was just a little bit